Greetings, Guardians, and welcome back to another episode here on GCG with me, your host, the Grim Crow. Now today we're going to be running through one of my favorite builds to use while running Solar Warlock, and that is what I like to call the AC-130. Simply just snap your fingers, and you get 5 seconds of unlimited grenades while using the exotic sun bracers. You'll have to make sure your grenades are set for the solar grenades, but it is just glorious while you're all the way up in the air watching the world burn around you. If you wanted a power trip, this is it, and I'm sure you've probably seen people on the derelict Leviathan using this build. This is just my personal rendition of it, so sit back, relax, and enjoy the fireworks. And in going to the subclasses, I personally run Well of Radiance, which I think is truly the best fit for this build, or at least in my case. You could still run Daybreak, I just feel like it doesn't have enough DPS. I would prefer to go for constant DPS and survivability with Well of Radiance. Up next we have the aspect Touch of Flame and Heat Rises. With Heat Rises, I use it because every time I consume a grenade, I get a Cure ×2 healing bonus, and Final Blows while airborne increase the duration of Heat Rises and grants me melee energy to start the cycle with Sun Bracers all over again. Next, it's Solar Grenade, and we're going to pair this with the aspect Touch of Flame, because here Solar Grenades increase linger duration periodically amidst blobs of lava around its perimeter. So not only is the AoE of these grenades already decent, you add this aspect, they get even better and cause more damage. Of course, I'm running Incinerator Snap. Snapping your fingers creates a burst of 5 projectiles that scorch targets. I just feel it's a lot more useful. Only downside is you have to be a little closer because they do have a range cap on them. And of course, I'm sure 9 out of 10 Warlocks would agree that Burst Glide is always the way to go. And Phoenix Dive is what I use as my ability, because I'm up in the air, I can crash down to the ground, gather up my wells, scorch targets if I have Heat Rises active, which I should, and I get to heal myself. And lastly, the fragments. We are running Ember of Searing. Defeating scorched targets grants melee energy and gives us an additional 10 recovery. Then, Ember of Char. Your solar ignition spreads Scorch to affected targets, and that gives us an additional 10% discipline. Ember of Ashes, you apply more Scorch stacks to targets. And Ember of Eruption, your solar ignitions have increased area of effect, granting us an additional 10 strength. What I've come to understand about this build is not so much that it's based on weapon damage, synergizing with the build and creating explosions, it's the abilities from the build itself that really give it its power. And now for the helmet, I run Harmonic Siphoning so I can get Orbs of Power and Well of Life. Picking up a Solar Elemental Well grants increased regeneration for a short period of time. I'm always running Well mods because they just help me gain energy for my abilities and they keep me alive. Up next, we have Sun Bracers, of course, the very thing that runs this build. I have Fastball, increases grenade throw distance. I also then have equipped Momentum Transfer, causing damage with a grenade, reduces your melee cooldown. Very important properties to have for this build. And Seeking Wells. Elemental wells you create will move across the ground towards nearby players. I don't mind helping out the team, sharing is caring, and I still get more than enough wells to keep myself alive and fully charged. Up next, the Robes. I am running Solar Resistance just because I had the extra space. Unflinching Auto Rifle, you can switch that out with whatever you prefer, and Font of Might. Now, what Font of Might does is every time you pick up an elemental well that matches your subclass energy type, it grants a temporary bonus to the weapon damage of that same elemental type, just to synergize our solar weapons with this solar build and get a little bit more damage. Alright, up next, we have the Boots. And for this, I run Recuperation, replenishes health each time you pick up an Orb of Power, and Innervation, reduces grenade cooldown each time you pick up an Orb of Power. And then Bountiful Wells. Elemental well mods that cause you to spawn elemental wells can now stack, spawning additional wells for each additional copy of the mod that you have equipped. And finally, the class item. Now for this, I run Bomber, which is reduces grenade cooldown each time you use your class ability. So whenever I'm in the air and I'm running low on health, or I want to go pick up my wells, I use my class ability to slam down to the ground, pick up my wells, and it gives me a chunk of my grenade energy back on top of what I get from the wells. We have a new artifact mod called Solar Fulmination. Your ignitions do increased damage in an increased radius. This should stack with our fragment Embers of Eruption, where your solar ignitions have increased area of effect. And lastly, I use Elemental Ordnance. Defeating a combatant with a grenade spawns an elemental well that matches your subclass energy type. We're in the air, we're hucking grenades all over the place, we're setting the world aflame. There's gonna be plenty of wells spawning from all of those kills. Alright guys, well if you enjoyed this take on my Solar Warlock AC-130 build, please be sure to leave a like, smash that subscribe button, and gently caress that comments button down there and tell me what you think of the video, or any other suggestions you might have. It's been great. I am your Grim Crow, and this is GCG. Thank you guys.